The first thing I noticed was the click. It was a civilized sound, soft, expensive, almost apologetic. The kind of click a luxury car made when it locked itself, or a hotel suite made when privacy slid neatly into place. Unfortunately, I was not in a car or a hotel suite. I was standing inside a glass-walled reading room on the 42nd floor of Cole Tower in downtown Chicago, and Adrian Cole had just locked the only door. Rain silvered the city behind him. The Chicago River looked like a dark ribbon far below, and lightning pressed a pale fingerprint against the clouds. Adrian stood between me and the exit in a charcoal suit, broad shoulders motionless, damp black hair pushed back from his forehead. At 30, he was already the Alpha CEO of Cole Meridian Group, one of America's largest real estate and hospitality companies. He had the composed face business magazines loved and the gray eyes I had spent one lifetime trying and failing to forget. "Open the door," I said. My voice sounded impressively steady for an Omega who had died once, awakened a little over 2 months earlier with every memory intact, and spent every day since avoiding the Alpha who remembered exactly how he had ruined our first life. Adrian's thumb remained on the security panel. No. There were many possible responses to that. Most required dignity. I had left mine in the elevator around floor 30. Excellent, I said. Kidnapping. Very on brand for a billionaire. His jaw tightened. The room smelled faintly of cedar after rain, his restrained alpha scent slipping through industrial-strength blockers. Once, that scent had meant late-night coffee, shared umbrellas, and the warmth of his coat over my shoulders. Later, it had meant a closed boardroom door and his voice saying, "I cannot choose you." In my first life, those 5 words had broken something quiet and essential inside me. I backed toward the long walnut table. If this is about the archive files, I sent copies to my attorney. It isn't. If it's about your engagement announcement, congratulations. Again, 6 years late, but I'm told etiquette never expires. Pain crossed his face so quickly, I almost mistook it for lightning. Then he came closer. I reached into my coat for my phone. Adrian caught my wrist, not hard, but with terrifying certainty. Heat moved through his palm. My pulse jumped beneath his fingers, betraying me with the enthusiasm of an unpaid intern. "Let go," he did immediately. That made it worse. "Noah," he said, and my name in his mouth was not a warning. It was a prayer worn thin from repetition. "You packed half your apartment. The museum placed you on leave. You bought a ticket to Seattle under your middle name." Cold slid down my spine. "You investigated me. I was trying to find you." Those are the same sentence when the person doing it owns a private security company. He flinched. Adrian Cole, who could send a room full of executives into cardiac distress by looking at a flight spreadsheet, actually flinched. Outside, thunder rolled over Chicago. "I won't let you disappear again," he said. "You don't get to decide. I know." His voice fractured on the last word. He looked at the locked door, then at me as if he hated the proof of his own desperation. "I know what this looks like. Do you? Because from here it looks very much like the Alpha who betrayed me has trapped me in a tower. Even fairy tales usually give the prisoner a singing teapot." For half a heartbeat, the corner of his mouth moved. My chest answered before my mind could stop it. Traitorous chest. Adrian took a key card from his pocket and placed it on the table between us. "The door opens with that. The elevators have been paused because there's a security alert downstairs, not because of you. You can leave as soon as the police clear the lobby." I stared at the card. "Then why lock the room?" "Because you were already reaching for the emergency stairwell, and the alarm system reported smoke on level 38. "Well, that was irritatingly reasonable." He drew a breath that shook. "But I did bring you here under false pretenses. I told your curator I needed help authenticating a ledger. I knew you would come because you never ignore endangered paper. Paper is defenseless. So am I, apparently." I laughed once, without humor. "You own half the skyline. And none of it matters if you walk away believing I never loved you." The storm seemed to stop at the windows. Adrian stepped toward me, then halted at the exact distance where I would not have to retreat. His hands hung open at his sides. "I betrayed your trust," he said. "I let you think ambition mattered more than you. I let my father use your designation against you. I watched you leave because I thought keeping you away from my family would keep you safe." His eyes shone, but he did not look away. "It was cowardice dressed as sacrifice. I have had 2 lifetimes to understand that." My throat tightened. He sank to one knee. The great Adrian Cole, Alpha Air CEO and professional destroyer of quarterly expectations, knelt on the carpet in front of an underpaid museum archivist with rainwater on his shoes. "Please," he whispered, "don't forgive me because I'm asking. Don't stay because I'm an alpha. Just give me one honest chance to show you what happened." The emergency lights flickered. Somewhere below us, an alarm began to howl. Adrian looked toward the door. I looked at the key card. Then smoke curled like a dark finger beneath the glass wall from the corridor outside, and every terrible memory from my first life rushed back at once. Before I tell you how an archivist with questionable survival instincts ended up trapped 42 floors above Chicago, with the alpha he had spent 2 lifetimes loving, let me ask one small favor. If second chances, stubborn omegas, and powerful alphas learning how to apologize sound like your kind of story, follow the channel and stay with us. I promise the locked door is only the beginning. I woke with my cheek stuck to a library book and the taste of regret in my mouth. This was not unusual. I had fallen asleep in inconvenient places since graduate school. What was unusual was the date glowing on my phone. March 14, 6 years before the night I remembered dying in a quiet hospital room after a heart condition no one had caught soon enough. There had been no violence, no dramatic last words, no relatives fighting over a hidden fortune. My first death had been painfully ordinary. I had worked too much, slept too little, and ignored a body that had been whispering for help until it finally stopped whispering. My last coherent thought had been of Adrian. Naturally, the universe punished me by sending me back to the morning I first met him. Before doing anything romantic, dramatic, or financially irresponsible, I made an appointment with a cardiologist at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. In my first life, an undiagnosed rhythm disorder had quietly stolen years from me. In this one, I intended to inconvenience death with regular checkups, actual sleep, and every medication my insurance would approve. I was 27 again, or perhaps 27 for the second time, which should have qualified me for a tax deduction. I lived in a small apartment in Lincoln Square, worked as a collections archivist at the Chicago Museum of Cultural History, and possessed exactly 3 marketable talents: identifying 19th century ink, alphabetizing under pressure, and pretending vending machine crackers were dinner. In this modern American Omegaverse, designation was supposed to be legally irrelevant. Federal protections had existed for decades. Employers could not ask whether someone was alpha, beta, or omega during hiring. Scent suppressants were affordable, heats were covered medical leave, and bonding without explicit consent was a felony. Society had progressed beautifully on paper. Paper, as I knew professionally, could lie. I was an omega, and people still softened their voices when they discovered it. They assumed I wanted protection, marriage, children, or a desk far from difficult decisions. I wanted health insurance, 8 uninterrupted hours of sleep, and funding for acid-free storage boxes. At 9:15 that morning, my supervisor appeared beside my desk, Dr. Evelyn Brooks was a 52-year-old beta curator with silver curls, red glasses, and the patience of a saint who had considered arson. She placed a leather portfolio in front of me. "Emergency donor meeting," she said. "Cole Meridian is renovating the Lakeview Grand Hotel. Their contractors found documents sealed behind a ballroom wall." I stared at the portfolio. "Please tell me the contractors did not laminate them." That was also my first question. "This is why I'm sending you." The Lakeview Grand was one of Chicago's best-known Art Deco hotels on Michigan Avenue, recently purchased by Cole Meridian for restoration. Its ballroom had hosted musicians, politicians, and enough forbidden romances to keep local historians employed for years. I arrived carrying a conservation case and wearing a navy sweater that made me look reliable but not ambitious. Ambition required ironing. Adrian stood alone beneath the ballroom's crystal chandeliers. He was 30, an alpha, and newly appointed acting CEO after his father's illness. Tall, dark-haired, and controlled, he wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. Dust marked one shoulder. The sight of him struck me with such force that the room tilted. In my first life, I had met him here. We had become friends, then something tender and unnamed. 1 year later, he had stood before reporters beside Victoria Hale, an alpha heiress, and announced a strategic engagement. He had looked directly at me and chosen his family's empire, or so I had believed. This time, I intended to avoid the entire catastrophe. Adrian looked up. His face lost all color. "Noah?" The way he said my name told me everything. He remembered. I turned around. It was not a dignified retreat. My conservation case struck the doorframe, sprang open, and released 6 pairs of nitrile gloves across the marble floor like startled blue birds. Behind me, Adrian said, "Wait." I walked faster. "Noah, please." I reached the service corridor before he caught up. He did not touch me. Instead, he moved in front of the exit and planted both palms against the wall, trapping no part of me except my patience. Up close, he looked exhausted. There were shadows beneath his eyes. His scent blockers could not hide the faint cedar note of distress. "You remember," he said. I adjusted my glasses. "I remember I have a 10 o'clock appointment with a wall. You remember me. Unfortunately, modern medicine has not found a cure for that." His eyes closed briefly. "I looked for you. We met 8 minutes ago, after you died." The words landed between us. I had wondered what happened after my first life ended. I had imagined Adrian reading the news with polite regret before returning to a board meeting. I had not imagined his voice sounding like this. Low, raw, stripped of every shield. He opened his eyes. "I went to your apartment. Your neighbor gave me the box you left with my name on it." My heart lurched. The box had contained small things: his forgotten cufflink, photographs from Milwaukee, the ridiculous wooden bear he had won for me at Navy Pier, and a letter I had never meant him to read while I was alive. "You had no right." "I know. That phrase is doing impressive work for you." I read the letter. His composure cracked. "You loved me." I hated how gently he said it. "Past tense," I replied. He absorbed the lie without defending himself. Then the fire alarm screamed. Workers spilled from the ballroom. A contractor shouted that dust had triggered a sensor. In the confusion, someone pushed through the service door behind me. Adrian moved instinctively, one hand braced beside my head, his body shielding mine without pressing against me. For one suspended second, we were close enough that I felt his breath at my temple. "Are you all right?" he asked. My pulse was behaving like it had received a grant. "Perfect," I said. "I'm often cornered by handsome corporate disasters before lunch." His mouth twitched. There it was, our old rhythm, alive before I could bury it. I ducked beneath his arm. "Move, Mr. Cole." He did. That should have been the end of our second beginning. It was not. The documents behind the ballroom wall turned out to be letters exchanged between 2 male performers in the 1940s. They had written in code about train schedules, songs, and weather. Every ordinary sentence carried a second heartbeat beneath it. For 3 weeks, I worked at the Lakeview Grand cataloging them. For 3 weeks, Adrian attempted to court me without calling it courtship. On Monday, he sent coffee. I returned it because he remembered my order, and memory was an unfair weapon. On Tuesday, he donated a climate-controlled cabinet to the museum. I informed him that philanthropy was not flirting. On Wednesday, he appeared in the archive with 2 sandwiches and said, "This is not philanthropy. This is turkey." I accepted the sandwich because principles were important, but free lunch was tangible. Adrian did not push. He asked before entering my workroom. He wore stronger scent blockers after noticing that his alpha scent unsettled me. He never mentioned the letter again. Instead, he learned the rules of my life. Rule 1. No meetings before 9 unless history was actively decomposing. Rule 2. Never place a drink near original material. Rule 3. If I said I could carry a box, he was permitted to doubt me privately but not aloud. One snowy afternoon, I found him holding a door open with his foot while pretending not to notice me wrestling a storage carton toward it. "Subtle," I said. "I'm a CEO. Subtlety is outsourced. And yet your quarterly report used the phrase strategic recalibration instead of we panicked." He laughed. The sound moved through the empty corridor, warm and surprised. That was the first dangerous moment, not the dramatic meeting, not the admission that he remembered. It was laughter under fluorescent lights, snow beyond narrow windows, and my body recalling how safe joy had once felt beside him. At the end of the 3rd week, we discovered one of the hidden letters had been written but never delivered. The paper was folded around a pressed violet. Its final line read, "If I cannot be brave in public, let me at least be honest with you." I translated the coded portions while Adrian sat across from me. When I finished, he said, "My engagement to Victoria was never real. There it was, the moment he had been waiting to offer, and I had been trying not to need." I removed my gloves carefully. There were cameras. There was a contract. My father threatened to sell the Lakeview Grand and dissolve the museum partnership if I refused. More than that, he threatened to leak your medical records and make it appear you had used our relationship to influence the acquisition. My stomach went cold. At the time, I had been applying for a federal preservation grant. A scandal involving donor favoritism would have ended my career before it began. So you protected me by humiliating me. Yes, his answer came without excuse. I thought if you hated me, you would leave before he could reach you. I thought I could dismantle his control and come back. You never did. Victoria dissolved the agreement after 6 months. By then, you had moved to Boston. Phones existed. You blocked me. Email existed. I wrote 83 drafts. The postal service existed, Adrian. He looked down. Cowardice also existed. How long did you live after I died? I asked. His gaze dropped to the pressed violet. 11 months, long enough to read your letter, remove my father's remaining policies from the company, and learn how many apologies can arrive too late. On the last night, I fell asleep in this ballroom with your letter in my hand. When I opened my eyes, the wall was sealed again. You were alive, and the calendar had returned to March. There was no grand cosmic explanation, only a hidden letter, an old ballroom, and 2 men who had somehow been returned to the moment before fear made all their choices. For once, I decided uncertainty could remain uncatalogued. That stole the anger from my next sentence. He reached into his briefcase and set a thick envelope on the table. It contained the old contract, emails from his father, and an affidavit from Victoria Hale. Victoria, 32, was now an alpha civil rights attorney in Washington, D.C., known for winning workplace designation cases. In a brief handwritten note, she said she had agreed to the public engagement to protect her own girlfriend from family pressure. She apologized for helping create the lie. I am not asking you to forgive the choice, Adrian said, only to know what the choice was. I read every page. Then I did something foolish, I cried, not elegantly. My eyes burned, my nose betrayed me, and one tear landed dangerously close to a 70-year-old envelope. Adrian moved, then stopped himself. May I? I knew what he meant. The sensible answer was no. For 1 minute, I whispered. He came around the table and held me. His arms closed carefully, as though I were something returned from a war. Cedar and winter air surrounded me. His chin rested against my hair. I felt the first shudder he tried to hide. I'm sorry, he said into the silence. I am so sorry. My hands curled into the back of his coat. 1 minute, I reminded him, after considerably more than 1 minute. I'm a CEO, he murmured. I negotiate extensions. I laughed against his chest, wet and unwilling. His hold tightened for half a second, then loosened the moment I shifted. That was our first embrace in the new life. It did not repair us, but it opened the door. I agreed to dinner under 6 conditions. Adrian listened while I read them from my phone. 1, this is not a date. Understood. 2, no private dining room, of course. 3, no gifts. His gaze slid toward the florist across the street. Cruel but fair. 4, no driver waiting outside like I'm being transported between royal residences. He can wait 2 blocks away, Adrian. I'll send him home. 5, no discussing marriage, bonding, fate, second lives, or your tragic 83 unsent emails. You counted, you numbered them. I value organization. 6, I leave whenever I want. His expression softened. Always. We ate at a small Italian restaurant in Andersonville, where the tables were too close, and nobody cared who owned what. Adrian had chosen it because I once said expensive restaurants made me nervous. Every fork looked like it had a specialized legal purpose. He asked about my work. I asked about the Lakeview restoration. We avoided our first life with the concentration of 2 people walking around a sleeping bear. Then the waiter brought tiramisu with 2 spoons. We didn't order this, I said. The waiter smiled at Adrian. Compliments of the gentleman. He called this morning and asked us to make it less sweet. I looked across the table. Adrian cleared his throat. Dessert is not a gift. It is a course. You found a loophole on the first dinner. Not a date, he corrected. I took 1 bite. It tasted of coffee, cocoa, and the dangerous possibility of happiness. Terrible, I said. Should I return it? I pulled the plate closer. That would be wasteful. After dinner, we walked beneath bare trees toward Clark Street. Snow had begun to fall, softening parked cars and storefront awnings. Adrian kept to the outside of the sidewalk without seeming to notice he was doing it. A gust cut through my coat. He started to remove his scarf, caught my look, and stopped. May I offer you a scarf without undermining Omega independence? You may submit the offer in writing. Processing time? 3 to 5 business days. He smiled and wrapped it around his own throat again. 5 minutes later, I stole it. Our second dinner became a Sunday visit to the Art Institute of Chicago. Our third became coffee beside Lake Michigan. Adrian listened when I spoke and, more importantly, listened when I did not. He also developed a habit of bringing me food. "This is courtship behavior," I said when he arrived at the archive with soup. "This is concern behavior. You forgot lunch. I delayed lunch. It's 4:30. Time is a colonial construct. Eat the soup." "Noah." I did. He sat across from me answering emails while I worked. The quiet between us changed. It was no longer empty. It had shape and warmth. Then my first heat of the new life arrived early. Stress could disrupt an omega cycle, so could memory, poor sleep, and apparently sharing tiramisu with one's former almost lover. I recognized the first wave while standing in the museum freight elevator with Adrian. Heat rolled beneath my skin. His cedar scent sharpened. The elevator suddenly felt no larger than a closet. Adrian went perfectly still. "I have suppressants," I said, though my hands had begun to shake. "Where?" "Desk drawer." He pressed the emergency stop, then immediately looked at me. "May I stop the elevator?" "The public lobby is crowded." "Even then?" he asked. "Yes." He removed his suit jacket and placed it on the floor, creating a barrier between us. Then he turned his back. "What are you doing, giving you privacy? You're also an alpha in an enclosed space." "I know." His voice was strained. "Tell me what helps." I sat against the wall. "Talk? About what?" "Anything boring." He began describing zoning regulations for mixed-use development. It was magnificent. Within 3 minutes, desire had been joined by a sincere wish to sleep. When the wave passed, Adrian called Dr. Evelyn Brooks and asked her to retrieve my medication without revealing why. He arranged for the service corridor to be cleared, then drove me home only after I consented. At my apartment door, I leaned against the frame. "You can go," I said. His eyes darkened, pupils wide from the effort of control. "I know." But he did not move until I went inside and locked the door myself. At midnight, my phone lit with a message. "I am in the lobby. If you need medical help, call me. If you do not answer by morning, I will leave." At 6, I found him asleep in an armchair, a paper cup cooling between his hands. "You stayed. Downstairs?" "With permission from security." "That is responsible." He stood too quickly. "Are you feeling better?" I should have sent him home. Instead, I noticed he had kept enough distance that his scent could not reach my apartment. He had waited without turning concern into a claim, leaving every decision in my hands. I touched the crease on his cheek left by the chair. Adrian froze. My thumb moved before I gave it permission. His skin was warm. His eyes lowered to my mouth, then lifted again. "May I kiss you?" he asked. The question hung in the pale hallway light. "Not yet," I whispered. He nodded once. "All right." His acceptance felt more intimate than a kiss. Part 5. The Escape Plan. By May, I had made the tactical error of becoming happy. Adrian and I spent Saturday mornings at the Green City Market. He wore baseball caps in an unsuccessful attempt to be a nice. I taught him how to choose peaches. He taught me that a billionaire could become personally offended by artisanal jam prices. $22, he said, examining a jar. "For strawberries?" "You charged $800 a night for a hotel room. The room had plumbing. The jam has cardamom. We bought both." At the museum, the hidden letters became the centerpiece of an exhibition called Words Behind Walls. Adrian funded it anonymously at my insistence. I wrote the labels. He attended planning meetings and pretended not to watch me. One evening, I caught him. "You're staring." "I'm observing." "Staring is rude. Observing is research. What have you learned?" His gaze warmed. "That you bite your lower lip when you're solving a problem. That you push your glasses up with one finger when you're annoyed. That you are pretending not to love me." The room became very quiet. I set down my pencil. "Confidence is unattractive." You stared at me for 11 seconds. I was researching. He laughed. And I wanted to keep the sound. That frightened me more than betrayal had. In my first life, loving Adrian had made me easy to wound. In this one, he was careful with me, which created an entirely different danger. Hope. Then his father returned. Richard Cole, 64, was a dominant alpha and former chairman of Cole Meridian. He had recovered from surgery and reappeared at headquarters with the subtlety of winter. He believed affection was leverage and designation was destiny. He had never forgiven Adrian for removing him from the board. I met Richard at the exhibition preview. He stood beside a display case, silver-haired and elegant, reading a letter about 2 men who had hidden their love for decades. "Mr. Bennett," he said, "still collecting other people's secrets? Only the historically significant ones." His smile held no warmth. "My son has always confused guilt with devotion, and you've always confused intimidation with conversation." His brows lifted. "You were quieter before. Dying improved my confidence. He could not know how literally I meant it. Richard offered me a position in Seattle at a private foundation, triple my salary. The message beneath the generosity was familiar. Leave, Adrian, or I will find another pressure point. I refused. 3 days later, an anonymous complaint accused me of mishandling donor records. The museum placed me on administrative leave while it investigated. Someone leaked photographs of Adrian visiting my apartment. Online articles described me as an Omega employee who had seduced a donor. Adrian came to my apartment furious, not at me, but with the white, controlled fury of a man holding his own power by the throat. My legal team can stop this, he said. Your legal team will make it look like I need an alpha to rescue me. Noah, I have my own attorney. Jamie Flores, 29, was my beta best friend and an associate at a Chicago employment law firm. He had a talent for cross-examination and choosing restaurants where he could steal half my fries. Jamie had already traced the complaint to a consulting company linked to Richard. Adrian paced my kitchen. Let me help. You can provide documents when Jamie requests them. That isn't enough. It has to be. He stopped. You're planning to leave. I looked away. Seattle had offered me an independent archive position after hearing about the controversy. It was legitimate, unrelated to Richard, and far from the Cole family, just until this settles. You left for Boston last time. This is not last time. My body doesn't know that. The admission emerged rough and quiet. Every time I can't reach you, I remember finding your apartment empty. I remember learning you were gone from a hospital administrator. I wanted to cross the kitchen. I did not. Fear doesn't give you ownership of me. I know. Then trust me. His face changed. He heard what I meant. Trust me enough to let me leave. He nodded. The next morning, my flight disappeared from the departure board. A cancellation notice sat unread beneath 3 messages from Adrian. The museum called to say Cole Meridian had requested an urgent authentication at headquarters. When I arrived, Adrian brought me to the reading room on the 42nd floor. Then the door clicked. Smoke curled beneath the glass. Adrian rose from his knee and crossed the room in 2 strides. He pressed the intercom. Security report. Static answered. Then a voice. Electrical fire on 38. Fire department is evacuating upper floors by the west stairwell. Stay sealed until instructed. Ventilation is isolated. Adrian looked at me. The reading room has independent air filtration. My memories had dragged me backward, but the present was simple. A storm, a fire alarm, and an alpha who had put the exit card within my reach. You canceled my flight, I said. No. The airline canceled it because of the storm. Jamie asked me to bring you somewhere secure because he found evidence Richard planned to approach you at the airport. You could have told me. Jamie asked me not to reveal the evidence until he filed for an injunction. He did not ask me to invent the ledger. That lie was mine, and it was wrong. Jamie knows me well. You once argued with a parking meter. It was objectively wrong. The lights died. Darkness erased the room. I heard Adrian inhale sharply. Noah? Here. His hand found the table, not me. May I come closer? Even frightened, even with alarms echoing through the tower, he asked. Yes. He approached until the cedar warmth of him reached me. Emergency lighting glowed red along the floor. His face emerged in fragments. Cheekbone, mouth, silver gray eyes. I did lock the door at first, he confessed. For 7 seconds. Before the security alert appeared, I locked it because I panicked. Then I put the key card down. Those 7 seconds were wrong. They were. I am sorry. You should be. I am. I believed him. That did not erase the act, but truth did not have to be absolution to matter. The sealed ventilation kept the smoke beyond the glass, where it smeared the corridor in gray. We stayed low beside the interior wall as the emergency instructions directed. Adrian gave me his damp handkerchief, then seemed embarrassed by how old-fashioned that was. Do CEOs receive handkerchiefs during initiation? I asked. Yes, along with cufflinks and the inability to enjoy commercial air travel. Tragic. His shoulder pressed lightly to mine. I'm afraid. The honesty surprised me. Of the fire? Of surviving this and watching you leave. I looked at him through the red light. That is an impressively selfish concern during an evacuation. I contain multitudes. Despite everything, I smiled. Adrian took a folded paper from his inside pocket. It was not a contract or a dramatic check. It was my Seattle job description, printed and marked with handwritten notes. What is this? A plan. If you take the position, Cole Meridian has an office in Seattle. I can work there 2 weeks each month. I found apartments near the foundation, but I did not contact anyone. I researched museums, coffee shops, and cardiologists covered by your insurance. My chest ached. You plan to follow me? Only, if invited. He swallowed. I don't want to cage you, Noah. I want to build a life with enough doors that you never feel trapped. There it was, the emotional truth beneath every mistake. In our first life, Adrian had chosen for me and called it protection. In this life, he was learning that love could not remove another person's choices, even to spare them pain. I touched the paper, and if I don't invite you, his eyes closed briefly, then I will love you from Chicago and answer whenever you call. That sounds miserable. I've had practice. The intercom crackled. Firefighters were approaching from the west stairwell. I turned toward him. Adrian, yes? You may kiss me now. For once, Adrian Cole had no answer. He lifted one hand to my face but stopped a breath away. I leaned into his palm, giving the final permission neither of us wanted to assume. His mouth met mine gently. The kiss tasted of rain and coffee, of 6 lost years and 1 impossible second chance. He did not seize or claim. He waited inside every movement, and I answered. My fingers curled in his shirt. His breath trembled against my cheek. When we parted, his forehead rested against mine. I love you, he whispered. I know. That is not the traditional response. I'm considering my options. He laughed softly, the sound breaking on relief. I kissed him again. I love you too, I said against his mouth. But if you ever lock a door to keep me in again, I will donate your entire wardrobe to a community theater. Understood, including the Italian suits. Now you're being violent. The firefighters opened the corridor 10 minutes later. We walked down 42 floors together. Adrian offered his hand at every landing, but waited for me to take it. I did, every time. The scandal began to collapse within a week, although the legal settlement took another 3 months. Jamie obtained emails connecting Richard's consultant to the false complaint. Victoria Hale joined the case and, with the bright calm of someone sharpening a legal knife, held a press conference outside the Dirksen Federal Building. Designation discrimination often hides behind concerns about professionalism, she said. And Omega's private relationship is not evidence of corruption. The museum cleared me publicly after its initial review. Over the next 3 months, Richard resigned from the last board seats he controlled. The leaked photographs were traced to his consultant, and a negotiated settlement funded an independent fellowship for Omega and Beta archivists. His revenge was not dramatic. It was administrative, which in America was often more satisfying. Jamie made sure the fellowship bore my name. Absolutely not, I said. Too late. Name it after someone dead. You were dead once. Close enough. Adrian choked on his coffee. Richard's greatest humiliation came at the Lakeview exhibition opening. Expecting reporters to surround him, he arrived through the main entrance. Every camera turned instead toward Evelyn Brooks, who announced the fellowship, and toward the elderly niece of one of the letter writers, who spoke beautifully about her uncle's hidden life. Richard stood unnoticed beside a tray of miniature quiches. I may have directed the catering staff to offer him the spinach ones he disliked. Revenge should be proportionate. Adrian and I began dating officially, which changed less than expected and more than I was prepared for. He still brought soup. I still stole his scarves. Now, however, I could kiss him when he became unbearably earnest. Our first night together was not driven by heat or fate. It happened after we assembled a bookcase in my apartment and discovered we had installed one shelf backward. Adrian sat on the floor, hair falling over his forehead, an Allen wrench in his hand. I oversee construction projects across 12 states, he said, and yet shelf 3 is facing the wall. The instructions were unclear. There were pictures, hostile pictures. I laughed until my stomach hurt. He watched me with an expression so soft that the room changed around us. What? I asked. Nothing. You're observing again. I'm memorizing. I crossed the space between us. The kiss began with sawdust on his sleeve and my hand against his jaw. It deepened slowly, built from questions answered in breath and touch. Adrian's alpha scent warmed the room. Cedar softened by something sweet that belonged only to happiness. My Omega instincts responded, but instinct was not command. We chose each other deliberately, he asked before every new touch. I teased him until his careful composure finally broke into helpless laughter. Later, wrapped together beneath a blue blanket, I traced the line of his collarbone. Do you regret not completing the bookcase first? I regret buying the bookcase. It was your gift. You said gifts were allowed after date 10. This is why policies need footnotes. His lips brushed my hair. Noah, Thank you for coming back. I understood he did not mean the apartment. We both came back, I said. He held me closer. Our relationship did not become perfect because we confessed. Adrian still defaulted to solving problems with money and security protocols. I still disappeared into silence when frightened. When he hired a car to follow me after a late museum shift, I sent it back and spent the night at Jamie's. Concern did not become consent merely because it arrived in a polished sedan. The next morning, Adrian arrived with no flowers, no expensive apology, only a list of therapists specializing in alpha anxiety and rebirth trauma. I made an appointment, he said. I should have asked whether you wanted transportation. I let fear make the decision. I opened the door wider. Come in. When I accepted the Seattle position for a 6-month project, he did not ask me to reconsider. He helped me pack archival gloves and complained that I owned too many books. There is no such thing, I said. There are boxes in the bathtub, temporary shelving. I had chosen the Seattle apartment because it stood 7 minutes from the foundation and required no train transfer. This was not laziness. It was strategic conservation of energy, a phrase I planned to use until retirement. We tried long distance. Adrian flew to Seattle every other weekend. I returned to Chicago once a month. We learned airport reunions, video call dinners, and the special intimacy of complaining about weather in 2 cities. In October, he visited me at Pike Place Market. Rain shone on the cobblestones. He carried no umbrella because Chicago had taught him to mistrust wind. You're soaked, I said. Seattle is aggressively damp. I pulled him beneath the awning of a flower stall. He kissed my cold nose. I have news. You bought Seattle. Only a small portion. I stared. He laughed. I'm joking. The board approved a permanent West Coast division. I can split my schedule if you decide to stay. And if I return to Chicago? Then the division will still exist, because I made sure the business case did not depend on your answer. That mattered. He had built an option, not an obligation. I kissed him beneath buckets of dahlias, while tourists pretended not to watch. I'm returning to Chicago, I told him. He went still. You are? Evelyn offered me the position of associate curator. Also, Seattle coffee is excellent, but it has encouraged dangerous levels of alertness. Adrian smiled slowly. Come home with me. This time, home did not mean his tower or my apartment. It meant the life between us. Part 8. The gala, the tabloid, and one very bad speech. Returning to Chicago did not mean returning to the person I had been before Seattle. The associate curator's office had my name on the door, 2 windows, and a desk large enough to lose important objects with professional efficiency. Evelyn handed me responsibility for the Lakeview collection and 3 junior archivists. On my first morning, I found Adrian waiting downstairs with coffee. You are not allowed to donate anything today, I said. I brought breakfast. That is how it begins. First a bagel, then suddenly the museum has a new wing shaped like your profile. He handed me the paper bag. Plain bagel, vegetable cream cheese, no wing. Inside was a sticky note. You earned the room upstairs. I am proud of you. I kept it in the locked drawer where I stored documents too personal to catalog. Our first serious argument after Seattle arrived because of a gala, as serious arguments often did when billionaires were involved. Cole Meridian's annual foundation dinner benefited housing programs across Illinois. Adrian was expected to attend with a partner. His communications director, an efficient beta named Rebecca Stone, asked whether I would walk the press line with him. Rebecca was 38, had cropped blonde hair, and spoke in bullet points even when ordering lunch. She treated Adrian like an occasionally malfunctioning public utility. Participation is optional, she told me in Adrian's office. You can enter through the private lobby, attend without photographs, or stay home and watch baseball. I would choose baseball. You hate baseball, Adrian said. That is how I feel about press lines. I agreed to attend publicly. It was my decision, and I was tired of allowing Richard's old shame to determine where I could stand. The evening began beautifully. The event filled the grand hall of the Field Museum, where candles glowed beneath the suspended skeleton of a titanosaur. I wore a midnight blue tuxedo. Adrian saw me at the foot of the marble stairs and forgot the sentence he was saying to the mayor. Close your mouth, I murmured when I reached him. A photographer could get inside. You look employed, moisturized, like every good decision I was once too afraid to make. My heart performed a complicated maneuver against my ribs. That line was suspiciously polished. I practiced in the car. Better. We stepped onto the press line hand in hand. Flashbulbs whitened the room. Adrian did not pull me forward or place a possessive hand on my neck, as some traditional alphas did for cameras. He stood beside me and let our joined fingers tell the truth. Then a reporter called, "Mr. Cole, is this relationship part of your new Omega inclusion campaign?" The question struck with the clean chill of ice water. Adrian stopped. Rebecca whispered, "Keep moving." He did not. Noah Bennett is the Associate Curator of Manuscripts at the Chicago Museum of Cultural History. He is an expert whose work has preserved a significant part of this city's history. The reporter raised his microphone. "But did dating an Omega influence your policies?" I felt Adrian's anger through the bond we had not yet formed, but sometimes seemed to share anyway. His cedar scent sharpened. Around us, security shifted subtly. "Basic fairness influenced our policies," Adrian said. "If you consider that romantic, your standards for corporations are alarmingly low." A few people laughed. The reporter flushed. It should have ended there. Instead, Adrian added, "Noah is also the reason I understand what my company failed to see." I smiled for the cameras, but the sentence lodged beneath my ribs. By midnight, headlines called me the Omega who reformed a billionaire. One article described my career in 3 sentences and my scent profile in 6 paragraphs. Another suggested Adrian's business judgment had softened because of an impending bond. I left the gala before dessert. Adrian found me in the museum's Hall of Gems, sitting beneath blue light beside a display of polished stones. "Rebecca said you came this way." Rebecca could locate a fugitive using seating charts. He sat one bench away, leaving space between us. "I said the wrong thing. You said something loving. It still hurt you." That was why staying angry at Adrian had become inconvenient. He no longer defended his intentions as though they erased impact. I watched light move through a sapphire. "I don't want to be your moral education. I don't want every good thing you do attached to the fact that you love an Omega. You're right. I know I influenced you. Partners influence each other. But those policies should exist if I never came back. They should." He leaned forward, forearms on his knees. "I wanted them before I remembered this life. After you died, I read discrimination reports from every division. I saw all the ways my father's beliefs had been translated into policy. You made me look, but what I saw created its own obligation." I turned to him. "Why didn't you say that?" "Because a camera was pointed at you, and I wanted the world to understand how extraordinary you are. That is sweet and strategically disastrous." Rebecca used stronger language. I let out a reluctant breath of laughter. He did not move closer. "How do I repair it?" "Tomorrow clarify publicly that I did not design your policies and that no employee's rights depend on knowing the CEO's boyfriend." Done. "Ask Victoria's nonprofit to audit implementation." Already scheduled. "And never discuss my scent profile with the press." His face became offended. "I would rather discuss my bank password." "Your bank password is probably Noah123. That would violate several protocols. So it's Noah123. He finally smiled. I held out my hand. Adrian looked at it as though it were a bridge appearing over deep water. He crossed the space and threaded his fingers through mine. "Are we all right?" he asked. "We're honest. That is better than pretending to be all right." We returned to the gala for dessert. Rebecca intercepted us beside the dinosaur. "I have prepared tomorrow's statement," she said. "I have also prepared resignations for both of you if either speaks to another reporter tonight." "You cannot fire Noah," Adrian said. "Watch me." I liked her immediately. The next complication arrived in a tabloid photograph taken 3 weeks later. It showed Adrian leaving a Washington restaurant with Victoria. The headline announced that the former fiancés had reunited. I knew it was nonsense. Victoria's wife was visible in the uncropped image, and Adrian had told me about the policy meeting. Knowledge did not prevent my body from remembering a press conference 6 years earlier. The phone trembled in my hand. I was back in the museum conservation lab, surrounded by the dry scent of paper. My first life pressed over the second like tracing paper. I could see the old Adrian beside Victoria, his face composed, my own reflection faint in the television screen. Adrian called. I did not answer. He called once more, then sent a message. I saw the article. The photograph is misleading. "I am at O'Hare and can come directly to you, but I will not arrive without permission. Please tell me what you need." My first instinct was to disappear. My second was to punish him with silence until he understood how badly I hurt. Neither belonged to the man I wanted to become. I typed, "Come to the museum. Bring the uncropped photograph and something with cheese." He arrived 40 minutes later carrying evidence and deep dish pizza. I panicked. I admitted after he showed me the full image. I know. Part of me believed it immediately. I know. You could look more offended. I'm not offended by a wound I caused. That sentence loosened something in me. We sat on the lab floor because food was forbidden near the work tables. Adrian removed his jacket and used it as a cushion beneath me. I ate pizza while he explained Victoria's audit proposal. You know, I said, most people use jackets as clothing. I'm diversifying its portfolio. There's the CEO. He brushed a crumb from the corner of my mouth, then paused with his thumb against my skin. May I? I kissed him before he finished asking. The tabloid issued a correction after Victoria threatened legal action. She also posted the full photograph with the caption, "Dinner with my wife and the world's most anxious alpha." The post went viral. Adrian pretended not to care. I printed it, framed it, and placed it in his office. "This is workplace harassment," he said. "This is history, not cinematic, not dramatic." Romantic in the quiet way, Adrian read my public statement twice before release, because he knew exact language mattered to me. Romantic in the way I sat beside him during a difficult board meeting, not to make him brave, but to remind him he did not have to be alone. Romantic in the way we returned to the same conversation until neither of us needed to win. One night, I found him asleep on the sofa, with the Lakeview exhibition catalog open on his chest. A yellow note marked the page containing the undelivered letter. I bent to remove his glasses. His eyes opened. Did I miss dinner? By 3 hours. You should have woken me. You looked tired. He caught my hand and pressed his lips to my palm. Stay? I looked at the man who had once tried to keep me by closing a door and now asked for even the smallest comfort. Move over, I said. He made room beneath the blanket. I lay against him, my head above his heart. Rain tapped softly against the dark windows. His fingers traced idle circles at my back. Noah? If this is another apology, office hours are closed. It isn't. Then what? Nothing. I just like knowing you'll answer. I lifted my head and kissed him. I'm here, I said. This time, neither of us mistook those words for a promise that fear would never return. They were better than that. They were true tonight. Part 9. A bond chosen twice. We moved into a renovated brick townhouse in Lincoln Park the following spring. It had large windows, a small garden, and enough wall space for my books. Adrian installed a sophisticated security system. I made him give me administrator access. You changed the alarm code, he said one morning. Yes, to 0423, the date you learned to make pancakes. I knew how to make pancakes. The pancakes stuck to the ceiling. Domestic life revealed unexpected facts. Adrian left coffee mugs in every room. I fell asleep with books open on my chest. He could negotiate a billion-dollar acquisition, but could not fold a fitted sheet. I could preserve a Civil War diary, but routinely forgot where I put my keys. We were ridiculous and happy. The question of bonding arrived quietly. In our world, an alpha-omega bond was medical, emotional, and legal only if registered by both partners. It could deepen scent recognition and offer comfort during heats, but it was not required for love or marriage. Too many old families still treated it like ownership. Adrian never asked. That was how I knew I wanted to. On the anniversary of the exhibition opening, I took him to the Lakeview Grand Ballroom after closing. The restored chandeliers cast stars across the polished floor. Behind glass, the final letter and pressed violet rested beneath soft light. Dance with me, I said. There's no music. You own hotels. Improvise. He took out his phone and played an old jazz recording. Then he held out his hand. We moved slowly beneath the chandeliers. I was not a good dancer. Adrian was worse, which wealth had apparently failed to correct. I have a question, I said. He tensed. That tone usually costs me money. Would you bond with me? He stopped moving. The music continued without us. Noah, that is still my name. Are you sure? I've had 2 lifetimes to think about it. His eyes filled. Adrian looked away, blinking hard. You're crying, I said gently. A chandelier reflected in my eye. Both eyes? Aggressive chandelier. I touched his face. I don't want a bond because you're an alpha or because I'm an omega. I want it because you learned how to open your hand. Because you stayed when I asked and stepped back when I needed. Because I love the man you chose to become. He covered my hand with his. I will spend the rest of my life choosing you without choosing for you. We completed the bond weeks later at a licensed clinic in Northwestern Memorial Hospital. There were consent forms, counseling sessions, and a physician who had no patience for poetic speeches. The bond itself was private and tender. Adrian's mouth rested at the scent gland near my neck only after I drew him closer. Warmth spread through me, not fire, not possession, but recognition. His emotions brushed mine like light through water, wonder, fear, devotion, and a happiness so deep it hurt. When it was my turn to mark him, he knelt so I could reach comfortably. "Still dramatic," I whispered. "My knees are a practical accommodation." "Of course." I pressed my lips to his skin. The bond settled between us with the quiet certainty of a door opening. No lock, only an invitation. Part 10, The Proposal Problem. Adrian proposed 4 times. The first attempt occurred at a rooftop restaurant. A drone carrying the ring was struck by a gust from Lake Michigan and landed in a bowl of lobster bisque at another table. I said no because I was laughing too hard to breathe. The second attempt took place at the museum. Adrian hid the ring inside a replica archive box. Evelyn mistook it for an untalloed donation and locked it in secure storage. I said no because we spent 3 hours completing retrieval paperwork. The third attempt happened at home. He cooked dinner, lit candles, and knelt beside the table. Unfortunately, he had hidden the ring beneath a folded napkin that I used to wipe up spilled tomato sauce. I said, "Ask me after we rescue the ring from the marinara." He interpreted this as another rejection and became so heartbreakingly quiet that I kissed him for 10 minutes out of guilt. The fourth attempt was mine. On a Sunday morning, Adrian came downstairs wearing an old t-shirt and carrying 3 abandoned mugs. His hair stood up at one side. He looked nothing like the polished alpha CEO on magazine covers. He looked like my life. I sat at the kitchen island with the recovered ring beside his coffee. "Adrian," he saw the ring and froze. "I have conditions," I said. His eyes became bright. Naturally, no engagement announcement negotiated by public relations, no exclusive magazine photographs, no ballroom full of people who call love a merger. Agreed. Jamie gets to choose the cake because he has threatened litigation. Agreed. And if you ever use the phrase Omega husband in a press release, I will deny knowing you. Adrian crossed the kitchen slowly. "Is there a question somewhere in these conditions?" I picked up the ring. "Will you marry me?" His answer was not elegant. It was a broken laugh and a kiss that tasted like coffee. He lifted me from the stool, then immediately put me down when I complained that I was holding a hot mug. "Yes," he said against my forehead. "Yes, Noah, in every life." We married in the courtyard of the Chicago History Museum in early autumn. Golden leaves moved across the stones. Evelyn officiated. Jamie cried before either of us and denied it aggressively. Victoria attended with her wife, Lena. Richard did not come. Adrian had invited him once, with clear boundaries, and accepted his silence without chasing it. I wore a dark blue suit. Adrian wore gray. When I walked toward him, his alpha composure vanished completely. "You're staring," I whispered when I reached him. "Research. What have you learned?" His hands closed around mine. "That I was wrong about love." Evelyn raised one eyebrow. "Would you like to share with the class?" Guests laughed. Adrian did not look away from me. I thought love meant preventing every loss. Then I thought it meant suffering quietly. Noah taught me love is attention. It is asking. It is telling the truth early enough for the other person to choose what to do with it. My eyes burned. I had prepared vows with jokes. They abandoned me. "I spent my first life believing you betrayed me because I was easy to leave," I said. "In this life, I learned your worst choice was born from fear, not absence of love. Forgiving you did not mean pretending it never hurt. It meant watching what you built after the apology." I squeezed his fingers. "You built doors." Adrian smiled through tears. We exchanged rings. When Evelyn pronounced us husbands, he paused before kissing me. "May I?" he asked, too softly for anyone else. "Always ask," I whispered. But today, the answer is yes. The kiss was warm and unhurried. Applause rose around us. The autumn air smelled of leaves, cedar, and the faint vanilla note of my own Omega scent blooming with joy. For years, I had thought a happy ending was a reward given after enough pain. I was wrong. A happy ending was not an ending at all. It was a practice. 1,000 ordinary choices made with care. Part 11. The life we kept choosing. Marriage did not cure Adrian's protective instincts. It gave us better vocabulary for discussing them. When I traveled to New York to examine a private collection at the Morgan Library, he asked whether I wanted security. No. A car? No. A hotel room with a functioning deadbolt? That one seems reasonable. He booked the room but put the reservation in my name and sent me 3 options first. Progress often looked boring from the outside. My heart condition was diagnosed early in the new life. Adrian attended appointments when invited, and waited outside when I wanted privacy. Treatment was simple. Sleep remained more difficult, largely because I had married a man who answered emails at midnight. I solved this by changing the home Wi-Fi password at 10:30. "This is authoritarian," he said. "This is healthcare. I'm the CEO of a technology subsidiary. Then consider it a skills assessment." He never guessed the password was "Go to bed Adrian" because he insisted no security-conscious archivist would choose something so obvious. Cole Meridian flourished under his leadership after the board adopted designation equity policies developed with Victoria's nonprofit. Adrian removed scent-ranking practices from corporate retreats, expanded parental and heat leave, and created an independent reporting channel. He did not announce these changes as gifts to me. They were responsibilities, not romance. I became curator of manuscripts at 33. At my first major lecture, Adrian sat in the back row wearing a baseball cap. He failed to look anonymous, but succeeded at looking proud. Afterward, a graduate student asked how I had discovered the Lakeview letters. "Behind a wall," I said. Adrian met me near the exit. A compelling scholarly explanation. "My full answer is in the catalog. It costs $45. Capitalism has changed you. Marriage to a CEO has corrupted my innocent archival heart." He kissed my temple. Our second chance never stopped feeling miraculous, but the miracle became grounded in ordinary things: grocery lists, prescription refills, snow shoveled before dawn, and coffee placed beside my hand without touching the documents. Sometimes I dreamed of my first life. I would wake in the Boston apartment I once occupied, alone and unable to call him. The grief felt real until Adrian's sleeping warmth reached me through the bond. He never told me the dream was over. He asked, "Where are you?" I would name the year, the room, the loneliness. Then he would say, "May I hold you?" I always answered yes. Adrian had dreams too. In his, he arrived at the hospital after I was gone. He woke with cedar flooding the room and his hands searching for me. I would put his palm over my heartbeat. "Still here," I said. Over time, the nightmares came less often. We did not forget. We became larger than what we remembered. 5 years after our wedding, the Lakeview Grand created a permanent archive room for hidden histories. At the dedication, the museum displayed the final letter with its pressed violet. Adrian and I stood before it after the guests left. "If I cannot be brave in public, let me at least be honest with you." "Do you think they were happy?" Adrian asked. "I think they had moments of happiness," I said. "Sometimes history only preserves the longing." He took my hand. "What will ours preserve?" I considered the question. "Your terrible pancakes, a devastating legacy." "My correspondence will reveal that you left mugs everywhere." "Slander." I leaned against his shoulder. "And this? 2 men who got another chance and finally learned what to do with it." His lips touched my hair. Beyond the ballroom windows, Chicago glittered beside the dark lake. Cars moved along Michigan Avenue. Somewhere, a train sounded across the city. The world was alive, indifferent, and beautiful. In my first life, I had mistaken being left for being unlovable. In my second, I learned that Adrian's betrayal had never defined my worth. His apology did not heal me by itself. His love did not rescue me. We healed because we told the truth, accepted consequences, set boundaries, and returned to each other freely. The alpha who once betrayed me had locked a door for 7 frightened seconds. Then he spent the rest of our life making sure I held the key. On the evening before the archive room opened, we returned to Cole Tower for the first time since the fire alarm. The reading room had been rebuilt with warmer lights, visible emergency releases, and doors that opened from either side without a key card. Adrian had insisted on every detail, though he had never entered after construction ended. He paused in the corridor. "We can leave," I said. "Do you want to?" I considered the question, then shook my head. Inside, the city stretched beneath us. Summer rain moved across the windows, gentle this time. The walnut table remained, its surface repaired where firefighters had dragged equipment over it. I placed my hand on the pale scar in the wood. "I used to think places remembered what happened in them," I said. "You work in a museum. That seems professionally necessary. They remember what we preserve. That is different." Adrian stood beside me, close enough for warmth, but not touch. "What should this room remember? That you gave me the key." His breath caught. I took the old access card from my wallet. I had carried it for years, not as evidence against him, but as evidence of the exact moment our story changed. On its blank white surface, I had written a date and 7 words. He asked, and I was free to answer. Adrian read them twice. You kept this? Archivists keep inconvenient things. I thought you kept it in case you needed to threaten me. That too. He smiled, though his eyes were wet. May I hold you? I stepped into his arms. The windows reflected us back. Two men no longer young, no longer frightened in quite the same ways. His silver had spread. Fine lines appeared beside my eyes when I smiled. Time had touched us gently because we had finally allowed ourselves to live through it. I would change those 7 seconds, he said against my hair. I know. I would change the engagement, the silence, every choice I made for you. I know that too, but I would not change finding you again. I leaned back to see him. Good. It would be difficult. I've already completed the paperwork. His laugh warmed the quiet room. We stayed until the rain passed. Before leaving, I placed the old card inside a small archival envelope and wrote a proper label. Access card, Cole Tower Reading Room. Object retained by Noah Bennett. Significance, personal. Adrian watched me seal it. In our home archive. We have a home archive. You married an archivist. Of course we have a home archive. Does it include my love letters? Restricted collection. Closed to researchers for 50 years. I object. Submit the request in writing. He opened the door and held it while I passed. Then he followed, leaving the reading room empty, unlocked, and full of nothing more dangerous than memory. In the elevator, Adrian pressed the lobby button and glanced at me as the doors closed. He reached for my hand, paused, and smiled when I met him halfway. The city descended around us in bands of gold and blue. At level 38, he grew quiet. I squeezed his fingers once. We did not need to turn an old fear into a ceremony, yet neither of us pretended it had vanished. Healing was not forgetting the floor where smoke had entered the corridor. It was passing that floor together and continuing down. When the elevator opened, evening air moved through the lobby. Adrian asked where I wanted to go. I chose a little noodle shop across the river, crowded and bright, where nobody would recognize him, and the spoons had no specialized legal purpose. He laughed, and we stepped outside without looking back. Epilogue, Sunday after forever. On the 7th Sunday after our 10th wedding anniversary, I woke to the smell of smoke. I sat upright. Adrian? From downstairs came the alarmed clatter of a pan, and my husband saying a word not approved by the Cole Meridian Communications Department. I found him in the kitchen wearing gray sweatpants, an apron reading World Oak's Husband, and an expression of personal betrayal directed at a waffle iron. At 42, Adrian was still broad-shouldered and unfairly handsome. Silver had begun at his temples. I liked it enough to discourage Di with threats. Happy anniversary, he said. Our anniversary was 7 weeks ago. Happy Sunday. The kitchen is smoking. The waffle is expressing itself. I opened a window. Chicago sunlight poured across the counters of the townhouse we had filled with books, photographs, and an unreasonable number of mugs. We had chosen a life for two, and it was complete exactly as it was. Adrian placed a surprisingly intact waffle on a plate. Strawberries formed a crooked heart. I made breakfast. Survived breakfast. Different achievement. He caught me around the waist. Our bond warmed, carrying his amusement through me like sunlight beneath water. You're rude to the man who supports your book habit. You once suggested I had too many books. I was young and poorly informed. I kissed the silver at his temple. After breakfast, we walked to the lake. The morning was bright and windy. Adrian carried coffee in a travel mug he would almost certainly abandon somewhere. At the shoreline, he laced his fingers through mine. Would you choose it again? He asked. The waffle? Me, he still asked occasionally. Not from doubt exactly, but from reverence for the answer. I looked at the man beside me, the alpha who had once believed love was a locked room, the husband who now knocked on my office door even when it stood open. I chose you this morning, I said. I'll choose you at lunch. Dinner depends on whether you leave that mug in the bathroom again. He laughed, tipped my face toward his, and waited. I closed the last inch between us. The kiss was familiar without being ordinary. Wind moved off Lake Michigan, cold and clean. His cedar scent curled around the vanilla warmth of mine. Behind us, Chicago continued its noisy, magnificent life. We had no cameras, no audience, and no destiny forcing our hands. Only 2 men, 2 lifetimes, and another Sunday we were lucky enough to share. We walked home with violets, sunlight, and our hands entwined. Together we carried our second chance into another ordinary day. If Noah and Adrian's second chance made you smile, you are warmly invited to follow the channel and join us for the next story. There will be more impossible love, more stubborn hearts, and if the universe is feeling generous. Fewer waffles harmed in the making. Until then, may every door in your life open toward someone who lets you choose.